I'm here with Megan Brock at Moms for Liberty, and it was great to run into my Twitter friend. How's the conference so far?
It's awesome. Lots of great people, lots of great moms, lots of normal people. It's great. Yeah.
Lots of normal people.
The Signal is a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm your host and the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril McGlego. Twice a month, we'll use this space to shine a light on the right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. We'll talk to guests who will help listeners navigate these perilous political waters by providing insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive routes. That was Bucks County Moms for Liberty member and Northampton Township GOP committee member Megan Brock, celebrating the so-called normalcy of those at the Moms for Liberty Summit that just passed in Philadelphia. So what is the new normal for Brock and the Moms for Liberty Qlan that she's part of? Today we welcome on the first half of the show Olivia Little, a writer and researcher with Media Matters. And in the second half, we are joined by Diana Leygerman, a writer, teacher, and Central Bucks School District mom who refuses to co-parent with Moms for Liberty. Hi, Olivia. Welcome to The Signal.
Hey, Cyril. Thanks for having me.
Olivia, you just heard that clip. Moms for Liberty believes they're the normal, or they personify what's normal in the United States. You were at the summit in Philadelphia, undercover, listening to various speakers and Moms for Liberty ground troops in the audience. You wrote about some of what you experienced last week in a great piece from Media Matters called Inside Moms for Liberty Summit, Big Money and Even Bigger Conspiracy Theories, noting that this group was manufacturing terror to mobilize parents and take over your kid's school. Can you take listeners inside the summit and tell us about some of the most remarkable conspiracies and fear-mongering that you heard?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, there's nothing normal about the summit. And so, I attended a number of breakout sessions that were closed to the media. And we quickly found out why they were closed to media, people from the media. And it's because of how just absurd the presentations were. So this was everything from claiming that Bill Gates is trying to steal your children's data for some sort of manipulation, world domination goal, to saying that Marxists and globalists are the ones behind different curriculum in public education. So what we saw overall was just this effort by Moms for Liberty speakers to create and craft a sort of amorphous evil force that's trying to corrupt children in America, and it just so happens to be located in public schools near you. They sort of adopt this technique because they're able to turn, when you create a sort of amorphous villain, you're able to turn it into whatever you want, right? And make it work for you. And making it sort of ambiguous allows them to apply it everywhere. And that's something that nearly every breakout speaker that I watched did. Right. So that's everything from, I went to a session about legal challenges with Kim Herman, and, which was supposed to be about, teaching parents how to advocate for their legal rights, teaching them what they are. But she started the session off talking about how, there are these people running schools, whether they're, the school administrators or teachers unions, and they're trying to quote unquote destroy America, or quote unquote get rid of our Constitution, somehow through critical race theory. Another one I went to, which I thought was particularly unsettling, was a session about social emotional learning, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically about teaching students tools to help them make just healthy choices, manage emotions, nothing malicious. But she's a homeschool consultant, and she spent probably an hour and a half speaking about how Marxists and globalists are the ones pushing this. So social emotional learning, the abbreviation is SEL. And so how Marxists and globalists are the ones pushing SEL in schools, and how it's being used to create a sort of inappropriate bond between teachers and students, and like, again, like Marxist globalist. She's the one who gave the Bill Gates conspiracy theory. She talked about microchips, and so on. But yeah, so overall, it's like, you know, you go to these sessions and they're sort of combining different conspiracy theories, and I think it's sort of like trying to knock out like four birds with one stone. So they're going in with like comprehensive sexual education, critical race theory, social emotional learning, and like gender ideology, and saying that they're all connected. And, you know, saying at the center of it is either like the CDC or like a UN initiative. Yeah, so it just like, you know, the conspiracy theories, while they were different, they all tried to connect them, right? And connect them to this, again, like ambiguous evil force that's trying to, you know, groom your children or corrupt your children. But that, again, nearly every session involved that faceless enemy that they created, and just to terrify parents.
Sure, and that's not a new tactic, and you know that there's a history of that kind of conspiratorial thinking in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it dates back, you know, at least to like the Cold War and the Red Scare, and with the John Birch Society, if not even before that, with like the Ku Klux Klan's opposition to public education. But it's no like accident that the enemy that they've targeted on is public schools, right? Because of a lot of the people actually, you know, funding Moms for Liberty are folks like Morton Blackwell's Leadership Institute, the Heritage Foundation, you know, and the GOP in general, as well as other dark money actors who have been on a decades-long crusade to destroy public education and replace it with, you know, private charter schools, Christian schools, etc. Olivia, did anything at the summit surprise you? I know you've been covering, you know, Moms for Liberty for the last 2 years, but did any, you know, were you taken aback by anything? Was anything extraordinarily kind of just off the wall that you heard?
Right. So I think at this point, there's very little that surprises me about Moms for Liberty, but I do think that they're doubling down on the uncritical use of the Hitler quote that was incorporated on the front of an Indiana Moms for Liberty chapter's newsletter. Them like doubling down instead of just apologizing was almost astounding. You know, because they publicly released, I think it was the Moms for Liberty Twitter account, and then the Indiana chapter released an apology saying, you know, we shouldn't have uncritically incorporated this. But at the summit, there was this energy of just like, they were unapologetic, if not like embracing it, and standing with, you know, the use of that quote, as well as the mom who, you know, put together the newsletter, which I thought was surprising, quite frankly.
Yeah, and Christian Ziegler actually gave one of the sessions about how to interact with the media, and you know he instructed
Mm-hmm.
people like never apologize; it shows weakness. So you know that's not you know after hearing that, that's definitely not surprising. But one session in particular of particular interest for listeners in Bucks County was the one run by Vermilion Education founder Jordan Adams. It was entitled "The First 100 Days: Getting Flipped School Boards to Take Action." The Hillsdale College grad with 0 education degrees, 0 experience writing public curriculum, and whose education consultancy company is officially just over 4 months old, found his first and only client locally in Penridge School District, where he was awarded a contract that's you know, essentially open-ended at $125 an hour to more or less audit the curriculum and provide recommendations to actual professional educators. So, you know, it should be noted that there's Moms for Liberty members on that school board, and that's not a coincidence. So I know you sat in on that session. Could you detail what he was preaching in the session and what you heard some of the audience members contribute?
Yeah. So the session was directed to school districts that were Moms for Liberty chapters that have successfully flipped school districts. So school districts where they now hold the majority, right? And it was essentially a how-to presentation on destabilizing the school district and pushing through Moms for Liberty policy priorities in the fastest way possible. So he broke it down into 4 months, right? January, February, March, April. It's called The First 100 Days. And he went step by step on how to sort of like what your school board members should be doing to get you to be able to efficiently pass these policies that Moms for Liberty is advocating for, without having to face backlash, like without having to actually address your opposition. And his strategy for that was basically bombarding the district with an array of like demands and changes so that they can't keep up. Right? It was throw as much as you can at the school district at once so that like you do not have to actually like deal with the consequences of your actions or deal with any sort of pushback, because they're going to be so overwhelmed. They're going to be so overwhelmed with the amount of information they have to give to you and the amount of information that you're requesting and changes, that there's just not going to be time for them to like effectively stop you. And he also, he spent time talking about essentially like making teachers and administrators fear for their jobs, right? Putting them on notice. On notice was like the word he used, and that is like essentially like putting job advertisements up for teaching positions early on. And then he also said that like you need to include your new board's values in these advertisements so that you're only hiring staff who essentially agrees with Moms for Liberty, right? Agrees with their stances on critical race theory, on like gender ideology, on anything like that, so that you can like keep pushed. Like, so now that if you pass these policies, they'll actually be enforced because you're only hiring staff that believes in the same thing that your new board does. So only hiring staff that aligns with these new values. And I thought one particular part of the presentation was interesting, which was he instructed the members attending to be very proactive with PR and social media messaging, just to get on top of any sort of backlash that might happen, right? So knowing that these like measures are controversial, he told them to like get a head start on it, right? Like don't like you should be on top of it and be on top of the messaging around these new policies that you're pushing through, so that like you're able to effectively like counter any sort of pushback.
Did he give an example of how to frame this?
Yeah, I believe he did. He gave us, so there were like 6 different key messaging techniques that he gave us. One was like, we're fulfilling promises on the campaign. 2, like to keep citing election results that like we overwhelmingly won. 3, that this is truly like self-government and it's for the public. 4, that the school district would be ideology free. 5, that quality matters and that's what they're pursuing. And 6, the stakes are too high to not, sort of enact these policies. The stakes are too high in terms of like child education outcomes and the safety of children.
Sure. And, he's a perfect example of like Moms for Liberty actually hiring someone, within their circle, regardless of whether they have experience or not. And, Tiffany Justice actually told Steve Bannon, I believe it was last year on his podcast, The War Room, she said, once we replace the school boards, what we need to do is we need to have search firms that are conservative search firms that help us to find new educational leaders. And unfortunately, in Penridge School District, we're seeing a lot of teachers leave. Part of it is because it's one of the lowest paying districts in Bucks County and Pennsylvania. But I think another reason why is because the writing's on the wall with this new school board, this new Moms for Liberty driven school board, that is putting them on notice. And so there's like 17 high school teachers they need to hire, 11 elementary level school teachers that they're going to need to hire. And I think folks in Bucks County are going to be really, vigilant and watching to see what happens and to see if we're getting an influx of maybe Hillsdale grads or, Liberty University grads, etc. So like I've said before, you've been covering this group for the last 2 years pretty extensively. How's the group evolved? How's Moms for Liberty evolved, since 2021 with regards to their targets, tactics, and strategy?
Yeah, so I think for one, it's just like the group itself is a lot larger and more stable than they were to begin with, right? Because they came from essentially like nothing. They had a very small presence for a number of months when they first started. And then with the help of right-wing media and different right-wing politicians, they were able to expand and sort of recruit around the country, which is another part of it. They've become these right-wing media sweethearts, which has allowed them to recruit in ways that they wouldn't have been able to do on their own, or recruit in ways that isn't necessarily compatible with a grassroots movement, right? When you have Steve Bannon telling his viewers like how to join Moms for Liberty, and encouraging them to like register and like join the cause, that's just like a different level of influence that two moms from Florida, two former school board members from Florida like wouldn't have on their own. Yeah, but they've also become regulars on like Fox News and an array of other like right-wing networks and shows. I mean, Steve Bannon's daughter was even at the summit in the press area. And Moms for Liberty has really expanded their partnerships with groups like the Leadership Institute, which we talked about a second ago, and the Heritage Foundation. And I think the Leadership Institute partnership is particularly interesting because, I mean, for one, Bridget Ziegler is the head of their school board program. And what they're doing across the country right now, or what we've been seeing, is creating these like school board training programs led by the Leadership Institute to essentially teach members how to run for school board, right? Or teaching them strategies about how to run for school board, which is something that didn't exist when they first started. And clearly, a Moms for Liberty initiative, or at least like collaboration with the Leadership Institute to create this program. The group has also like shifted their priorities from COVID mitigation policies to an array of like anti-CRT, anti-LGBT priorities. Because what they did to begin with was they went all in on sort of harnessing this COVID era parental frustration. And then the second that became irrelevant, they shifted and went all in on anti-CRT, anti-LGBTQ policies. And they've really just like, they've gone from there and sort of left, anti-masking behind because it's not as relevant anymore. But they were able to build that base by casting such a wide net with COVID mitigation like frustrations, that they have a really solid base now because of that. And I think they're also, they're sort of embracing right-wing extremism in a way that they at least used to try to hide. Like they used to have some shame about it or would do it covertly, but now it's just like mask off entirely, especially if you look at, not just their speakers from the summit, but the speakers that they're hosting around the country. Like Lara Logan spoke at one of the county, for a county event for a Moms for Liberty chapter, and spent 45 minutes talking about everything from microchips to how the Las Vegas shooting was a false flag, right? And that's a Moms for Liberty event. that was then put online, right? So they're not trying to hide it at this point. And it's very clear from, whatever guest appearances they have around the country to their like summit lineup, that this is just something that is inherent like within the organization, like this sort of right-wing extremism.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, they are embracing their Moms for Liberty's big tent includes everyone from like Proud Boys to Christian nationalists like David Barton, who was at the summit, to 3%ers and other militia groups, as well as the Media Matters kind of raised the alarm about one of their speakers, Chris Ann Hall, who back in 2014 declared that I'm an oath keeper, and who's spoken to extremist groups such as the racist Neo-Confederate League of the South, Eamon Bundy's People's Rights Org, various constitutional sheriff groups, and other extremists. But Olivia, one of the missions or goals of Media Matters is to kind of like critique the media, right, and how they're covering groups like Moms for Liberty. In your first piece, you were critical of how the Washington Post was covering the group. And in that piece, which is called Unmasking Moms for Liberty, and we'll link to it in the show notes, you wrote, "Without the spotlight of responsible media, Moms for Liberty will continue to brand itself as ordinary moms banding together to fight for parental liberties when it's clear that powerful people and institutions on the right are actually pulling the strings." Has the media gotten any better with its coverage, or is it falling into the trap of normalizing the group by not highlighting its more extremist positions and uncritically regurgitating the kind of folksy, we're just normal moms origin story that they like to tell, while glossing over its ties to, right-wing foundations, political actors, and money?
Right. So I think that there are obviously some responsible reporters and outlets covering them, but overall, mainstream media has been duped by the group. They're essentially taking their word as fact instead of doing their research, questioning them, pushing back in any sort of way. And the thing is, we know Moms for Liberty constantly lies. Like they're lying about their finances, they're lying about their connections, they're even lying about membership numbers. I know that they count Facebook members and their like membership number. They mentioned that in an early Washington Post article. So just like trying to make themselves seem bigger and more like infallible than they actually are. But no, they've really fallen. Mainstream media overall has really fallen into the trap of letting them brand themselves as just moms or concerned moms. And I don't know if it's because they're afraid that if they, are critical of them, then they'll be accused of being mom haters, because that's, the sort of talking point that they always push back with. Like, why do you hate moms? Why do you hate moms who care about parental rights? And it just, that's not the case. So, but yeah, no, they've let them get away with so much. But I think at this point, they're realizing their mistakes, right? Because it just, their extremism, like far right extremism, and just like connections to these right wing organizations that have been trying to gut public ed for years, it's undeniable, right? And it's unavoidable when you're doing this sort of reporting. But I do think that mainstream media, for the most part, is a key reason why they've been able to grow and get to the point that they are like now, or why they've helped to give them some sort of legitimacy that they've really like needed to keep growing. And yeah, I think mainstream media is definitely responsible for legitimizing them for years, right?
Sure. And unfortunately, because like local media continues to be gutted and has been for like the last 2 decades, you're not getting the kind of like robust and critical reporting locally that I think is like so important, to inform voters, right, about who these extremists are, the fact that they are liars, right, and they'll say anything to kind of achieve their goals and to get power. Before we say goodbye, Olivia, you said that you're gonna be working on some new articles based on your reporting and research from the summit. Can you kind of give listeners a hint of what might be coming up?
Just there's more to come regarding the summit and just regarding Moms for Liberty in general. We've kept a close eye on them for years and are going to continue to do the same.
Okay, well, we'll be looking for your work online and obviously sharing it with our listeners and readers. Olivia, thanks again. Thanks for the work that you did, over the weekend at the Moms for Liberty Summit. And thanks for your kind of tireless reporting and writing about this group and kind of shining a light on their extremism. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Help support this podcast from the Bucks County Beacon, who Moms for Liberty calls opposition media. You can do so by going to buckscountybeacon.com and by clicking on Support the Beacon. And check out all of our great work and reporting at buckscountybeacon.com. Hi, Diana. Welcome to The Signal.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Diana, we just heard from Media Matters' Olivia Little, who gave us an inside view of the Moms for Liberty Summit that just passed and took the mom mask off all the extremism, the conspiracies, and the hate that filled the Marriott in downtown Philly for 4 days. Now, you were on the outside, though, protesting and speaking out in front of the Philadelphia Free Library as part of a rally organized by Indivisible Philadelphia. Can you tell us about the event, mainly why you were there, what you told people, and why that location was chosen?
Sure. I was invited to speak at the Indivisible Philly rally in front of the library. It was me and another parent in the district. We were basically invited to talk about what's been going on in Central Bucks in terms of Moms for Liberty specifically. But the event was really lovely. I mean, I think it was maybe like 100 people or so that showed up. People came, and the reason we were at the library for that particular event was because we were protesting the book bans that Moms for Liberty have initiated all across the country. So, people showed up with signs of books that have been banned or challenged in, across the country. And I was there to speak about what Moms for Liberty members and their supporters have done specifically in Central Bucks.
So why are you and a growing number of other Central Bucks School District parents, as well as parents just all across Bucks County, organizing and mobilizing to declare that you don't co-parent with Moms for Liberty? Can you sum up why you're both intellectually and morally opposed to this group?
Yes. Well, intellectually, mainly because not mainly, but I would say I'm a teacher and a parent and someone who values lifelong learning and literature and knows how important literature is to teach kids not only about what they don't know, but about other people and the other experiences that people live. It's very easy for us here in suburbia to get used to what we see every day and think that that's how the rest of the world is, but it's not. The rest of the world is not like this. Like when I went to when I graduated, I actually am from the area. I went to high school in the area. I graduated from CB East, and going away to college is definitely a different experience than you have here when you just kind of live in this world. I obviously had a little bit more of experience because I'm an immigrant and I grew up in the Northeast mainly, so I definitely was around a much more diverse population. But if I had spent my entire life here in Central Bucks, it would definitely be a little more difficult branching out into the world and not knowing that, like, oh my God, there are other people who have different experiences than I do. Intellectually, it's important for us to make sure that we expose our children and our students to all people in the world and make sure that we're all growing up to understand that like people are different, and just because they're different, that doesn't mean that they're any less or more or anything, right? Where we all have different experiences. And so the idea of someone saying certain books should not be read by all of our kids based on their own very narrow worldview is ludicrous and wrong, really, frankly, on an intellectual level. On a moral level, a lot of this is coming from a religious agenda that is something many people don't live by or abide to. And so it's interesting to me. Well, it's concerning to me that some people believe that their moral view is the only right moral view, and that is obviously not true. Most people will tell you that that's not true. And so when you have Moms for Liberty saying like what they think is right, and that's how everyone should think, that's obviously wrong. And we would be doing our students and our children a disservice if we said, yeah, you're right, your view is the only right view, and let's just, be okay with that. So that's I hope that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. And you've been following and writing about and organizing against the group, since its inception locally in Bucks County, the Bucks County chapter.
Yes.
The two most recent leaders of the chapter, Jamie Tromba and Trisha Dobler, told Face the Culture podcast, which kind of speaks to the, religiosity of this movement, that, and I quote, "We're definitely in a battle of good and evil at this point." That's how they're framing their school board activism. And also told this podcast that public schools are, quote, "now making it where pedophilia is okay." That's what they're doing. They're inviting it into their schools. Can you tell us about some of the main players besides these two leaders, one of whom, Dobler, allegedly is no longer part of the group, although she was at the summit, and that might just be for optics because, and correct me if I'm wrong, apparently she's running Arthi Martino's campaign for Central Bucks School Board.
I don't know that for sure. I know that she's hosted many events and has been promoting her. And she, wears her shirt across, Trish Dobler, wears Arthy's shirt. And so it was my understanding that Trish Dobler was in some way very closely involved with the Arthy Martino campaign. Yes.
Okay, but in the end, and it's funny
Right.
because a lot of these moms for liberty now are now kind of saying they're not moms for liberty,
Right.
even though they're still kind of pushing this agenda, actually going, to the summit, etc. But it's not just those two. There's a lot of other actors in this group that have been kind of sowing chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And can you just kind of like tell us a little bit about who some of these folks are and what they've done to divide the community and make Central Bucks School District schools less inclusive and more intolerant?
Honestly, yes. It's the same people that were coming out against masks, in 2020 and 2021. This reopened Bucks crew that has been coming to school board meetings, yelling at school board directors, saying that they're child abusers because they wanted to protect our students from COVID and protect teachers and staff by, having them wear masks as was dictated by the state. And so it's literally the same exact people who started against masks, and now they've moved on to books and pride flags and really anything they disagree with at this point. They see sexuality in everything, which is actually disturbing to me that they pay so much attention to that. Everything is sexual to them. But yeah, it's the same people like Trish Dobler and her friends who are running that pack right now, the Protect Bucks pack. I find that title very ironic because all they're doing is sowing division and not protecting anything. But also, who put them in charge of protecting anything or anyone? Nobody appointed them to be the Bucks leaders here. Bucks County is a pretty decently sized county. What they mean is they're, quote, protecting Central Bucks and Penridge. They're really just concentrating on those two. But it's funny that they say Bucks as a whole because I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people who would not be interested in their, quote, protection. But it's the same people, who are working on this pack. The Hogans obviously have been very much involved in all of this. Josh Hogan is currently running for Penridge School Board. He is the one that, said they want a clean, normative, righteous Bucks County or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is, oh my gosh, those words are disturbing. But yeah, it's the same people who fought against masks are, going after teachers first about COVID. Now they're going after them about books and curriculum and whatever else.
Yeah, and accusing them of kind of being groomers that kind of
it's disgusting.
ties into that whole kind of like pedophilia conspiracy hysteria that the group's leaders have been promoting.
Yes.
Even one of the main actors speaking at a Central Bucks School Board meeting suggesting that The Bluest Eye, which is a book that covers like tough subject matter about sexual abuse, but somehow that was sexualizing children. Like this writer Alice, talking writing about this, and somehow they equate that with sexualization of children and and grooming. And obviously not all books are for everyone, but like some of these books are obviously like over the head of some of these parents that are actually like speaking out against it, because obviously they're missing the point of the whole book if they even read it, right?
They haven't read it. That's the thing. They're not even reading these books. And you know what? If you pull pieces of books out and read them out of context, I'm willing to bet, I've taught English literature for 10 years. I'm willing to bet now, like when I even think about all the books that we've taught that are in the curriculum, right? They're not just random books that I'm pulling into the classroom. If you pull certain passages out without any context, you would think like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That is so sexy. Like, why are we having our kids read it? But like in 1984, there's a book that gets quoted both by the right and the left, ironically, because, Orwell was a socialist. But it gets quoted a lot, but there's like a sex scene in there, and if you read it outside of the context of the entire novel, you would be like, oh my gosh, this is too much, right, for kids. And you can do that with any book, mostly that we're teaching, So, when they pull passages out and say, well, this is they're doing it for shock value. They don't even realize that they themselves have been groomed to do this, on a national by these key players on a national level. The fact that they see sexualization in everything says a lot more about them than it says about any of the books or any of our students or any of our teachers. They are obsessed with this topic. It's concerning because they've never once, prior to this cultural war that they brought, probably ever did anything about actual grooming and about actual child abuse. I'm pretty sure they weren't protesting churches when the abuse was happening there. So it's this culture war is truly just that. It has nothing to do with real issues or real problems that our kids and our students are facing, because if it did, we would know that, right? They would talk about mental health, and they would talk about staff leaving, they would talk about how many teachers we've lost that are amazing, right? Like, they would be talking about even learning loss that they pretend to care about, they haven't done anything about. So this Moms for Liberty rhetoric is truly just for politics. That's all it's for.
And I think it should just be noted, and we should remind listeners, that sitting school board president Dana Hunter, who's part of Paul Martino's, bankrolled slate of candidates along with his wife, she, as sitting school board president, she helped empower this cherry picking of passages as a prelude to potential book banning by secretly bringing in the Independence Law Center, which is the legal arm of this far-right Christian nationalist PA Family Institute, who she tasked with drafting administrative regulations for 109.2 about book challenges, which took out a passage that says that you should be looking at the whole book,
Right.
the quality of the entire piece of literature, and the value of that, rather than just honing in on one single passage and using that as like the end all be all of whether or not this book should be removed from the library or not. And Reuters reported that she admitted that she did that in secret, right? She didn't think it was incumbent upon her to be transparent with parents and teachers and librarians and students and taxpayers. And I think this is what the community is up against. It's against this Moms for Liberty type candidates and Moms for Liberty type school board members like Dana Hunter, like Lisa Sissio, like Deborah Cannon, who will do anything to push their far right and at times Christian nationalist agenda, which actually is working to undermine public education and make students less safe, especially if you're a student who is part of the LGBTQ community or a student of color. To wrap this up, can you give people advice locally about how to get involved in this fight to keep books on library shelves, to keep LGBTQ and students of color feeling safe and represented, and to keep Moms for Liberty extremists off school boards? What can they do? Where can they go? Is there any place they can donate to?
So I think I want to make a note that, first, these policies don't just affect our marginalized students, even though they do very much so, right? They definitely affect our LGBTQ students, our students of color, like all of our students. But they really affect all of our students, because when you take away books, then that's a disservice to all students. When you make classrooms, when you sterilize the classrooms, you make them not very warm, that hurts all of our students. When you stifle conversations and debate and any type of critical thinking in the classroom, that hurts all of our students. So we can go down the path of Penridge and also start hiring people to be consultants on the curriculum. And those people they don't know anything about education. So this ultimately hurts every single student in our district and essentially, community members in our district as well. So that's one of the things I wanted to say, that it's not just a certain subset of students. What I also want to say is how to get involved. Well, not all is lost. And, we're working really hard to flip the board. We have 5 great candidates. They all have their own PACs, so you can donate directly to their PACs. And their names, am I allowed to talk about what their names are? Okay, so it's Heather Reynolds, Karen Smith, Susan Gibson, Rick Herring, and Dana Foley. Important. There are 2 Danas. Dana Foley is the one that's running against or in Region 3. So those are the candidates. They have their own PACs. You could donate directly to them. There's also a PAC called CBSD Neighbors United. That's an overall PAC that just, if you don't have a candidate running in your region, you can donate directly to that PAC. And another way to get involved, and so you can donate, you can volunteer, you can knock doors. Knocking doors is incredibly important. Not a lot of people want to do it, but it's one of the most important things you can do. There's also another way to get involved. There's an organization, they're nonpartisan. They're called AFI, or Advocates for Inclusive Education, and they do a lot of education stuff. So they talk about policies, they talk about the books that are being challenged and or banned. They have book clubs, they have events, and they're really just here to educate the community about what's going on in the district. They're not political, they're not endorsing candidates, so they're also great, and you can definitely get involved through them as well. If knocking doors may not be your thing, you can also be educated and then in turn educate everybody else. So social media is also really important, so make sure to like and follow and share all of the candidates' posts. And I think that's kind of it.
Yes, I mean, like you said, this is the threat of a bad example for everyone, right? Because it's kind of narrowing the worlds of each and every single student in the school district by restricting what they can read about, what they can learn about, what they can actually discuss and debate in the classroom. And then on a larger level, there's the threat of the bad example of Central Bucks School District, because just last month in June, it was reported that there was a school district in Ludlow, Massachusetts, that actually copy and pasted, a right-wing school board copy and pasted Central Bucks School District's library policy in order to make it easier for one parent to challenge and ban a book for every single student in their district, rather than just restricting it for their own, if they even have a student in the district, right. which we often know is not the case. Diana, thanks again for coming on today. Thanks for your tireless work, organizing and writing, and social media reporting that you do. And I hope you'll come back on again in the fall as we get closer to the election.
Thanks, Cyril. Thank you for everything you're doing too. Appreciate your work.
This has been The Signal, a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm Cyril McAlego, editor-in-chief and host. For more progressive news, analysis, and opinion from Bucks County and beyond, go to www.buckscountybeacon.com.
The Signal is produced by Kevin Mahoney at Raging Chicken Media. Intro-outro music by Maf et Tula, featuring Cartas a Felice, used with permission.